My name is Evan Reed. I grew up in a small town about an hour from Shenandoah National Park, Virginia. If you've ever been out there, you know what I mean when I say that place feels ancient, older than the trees, older than the silence, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, but watchful. When I was a kid, my cousin Micah and I were practically inseparable. We were more like brothers than cousins. He was 6 months older, but always acted like he had to protect me, even when we were just running around in the woods behind my house pretending we were explorers. We shared everything: stories, bikes, video games. But more than anything, we shared a fascination with the strange. You know how most kids are into superheroes or dinosaurs? Not us. We were obsessed with local legends, old ghost stories, missing person cases, anything with mystery. And where we grew up, there were plenty. Virginia has this weird energy, like the land remembers more than people want to admit. Every trailhead had a whisper of a rumor. Every ranger had a story they wouldn't tell until the second beer kicked in. But none of them stuck with us like the one about the trail that only appears at night. We first heard about it at a summer cookout when we were 13. One of Micah's uncles, a guy who'd been drinking just enough to talk, told us about a phantom trail deep in Shenandoah that only shows up after midnight, usually when the fog rolls in. He said some hikers had claimed to see it over the years, mostly locals who knew the park better than they should. The trail supposedly looks normal at first, narrow, winding, a little overgrown, but once you're on it, it changes. Some people say it doesn't end, others say it loops forever. One guy claimed it took him somewhere that didn't exist on any map, where the stars were wrong and the forest was breathing. We were hooked, Micah especially. He talked about it non-stop that whole summer. He started digging through old park maps, ranger interviews, even newspaper archives, looking for anything that might prove it was real. It became a kind of obsession, the kind that gets under your skin and doesn't let go. I thought it was just a phase, a creepy story to fill the long summer nights. But for Micah, it was more than that. He wanted to find it. Even after we graduated high school and drifted apart a bit, he got into hiking and trail photography. I went off to college. We still kept in touch. Every now and then, he'd send me weird articles, blurry photos, grainy audio clips he swore were from deep in the woods. His emails always ended the same way. One day I'm going to find that trail. I'll prove it's real. The last time I saw Micah in person was the weekend before he went back into the park, the last trip he ever made. He didn't say much, just that he had a new lead and that it was the right time of year. He seemed excited, but there was something else too, like he knew something I didn't, like he had already made peace with whatever he thought he was going to find. I didn't hear from him after that. 2 days passed, then 5, then a week. By the time I realized Micah wasn't coming back, it was already too late. People in the Shenandoah area don't like to talk about the night trail, and when they do, it's always with a nervous laugh or a quick, "Oh, that old legend." But you can tell they're not really laughing. There's something about that particular stretch of forest near Hawksbill, deep off the marked paths, that gives people a reason to lower their voices. Even seasoned hikers avoid that zone after dark, not because of bears or cliffs or weather, but because sometimes, just sometimes, a path shows up where there wasn't one before. The story goes back decades, maybe longer. Nobody knows who first saw it. Some say it's an old Native American spirit path that was never meant for the living. Others think it's something left behind from before the park even existed, a kind of fracture in the land, like a scar in reality that never healed. They call it the Midnight Loop. The name isn't official, of course. You won't find it on any map, not even the historical ones. But in quiet conversations, over beers or campfires, that name always comes up, the Midnight Loop. A trail that only appears when the fog is thick, the moon is waning, and the clock strikes 12. 1 minute it's just trees and moss. The next, there's a narrow path, lit only by the moon, winding off into the woods like it's been waiting for you. Some say it's cursed, others say it's a test, that it calls to a certain kind of person. People who are looking for something, people who feel lost, people like Micah. Those who claim to have seen it and made it out, and there aren't many, always say the same thing: it changes while you walk it. Trees don't stay in the same place. Sounds bounce the wrong way. Time stretches and folds in on itself. You'll walk 10 minutes and your watch says it's been hours. Sometimes your flashlight dies the moment you step onto the trail. Sometimes it flickers like something's walking behind you. There's one story that really stuck with me. A man back in the 80s who hiked alone and said he found the trail while trying to follow a deer. He said he saw strange lights like lanterns swaying in the trees. He followed them for miles, and when he finally turned around to go back, there was no trail, no lights, nothing but thick, endless forest. He said he screamed until his voice broke. It took him 3 days to get out, and when he did, his fingernails were black like he'd been digging at something, though he didn't remember doing it. People said he was lying, that he made it up to get attention, but I remember seeing a photo of him in the local paper when I was a kid. He had this look in his eyes, not crazy, but hollow, like something had been taken taken from him out there. Micah knew all these stories. He knew every detail, every variation. He even talked to a retired ranger once who said he'd almost seen the trail once, but turned back the moment he felt the pressure drop and his shadow started moving in the wrong direction. For Micah, the night trail wasn't just a myth. It was a destination, a challenge, a mystery begging to be solved. He wanted to be the one to find it and come back with proof. But now he was gone, and I was starting to think the trail hadn't just taken him, it had chosen him. Micah disappeared on October 12th, a Thursday. I remember the date because we had just exchanged texts that afternoon. He said he was heading out that night to camp near the edge of the park, off one of the lesser-known trails that only locals use. I asked him to be careful, more out of habit than worry, and he replied with a thumbs-up emoji and the words, "If I'm right, I'll finally have something worth showing you." That was the last time I heard from him. He didn't answer my texts the next day. I figured he was off-grid as usual. No cell service in the middle of the park, especially where he liked to go. But by Saturday morning, I had a knot in my stomach. His parents called me. He hadn't checked in, hadn't posted on his photography blog, and his last GPS ping was the night he left, around 11:48 p.m., near a spot called Hazel Mountain. They filed a missing person report that afternoon. Search and rescue teams were dispatched. Helicopters flew overhead. K9 units combed the woods. For days, volunteers spread out along every trail, ravine, and overlook, but nothing, not a trace, not even a piece of gear. It was like the forest had swallowed him whole. I joined the search on day 3. I remember the smell of wet leaves, the way the fog curled low across the ground. Every snap of a twig made me turn. Every gust of wind through the trees sounded like his voice. I kept calling his name, even when I knew no one was going to answer. On day 5, they brought in drones. Still nothing. They even dragged a nearby river, just in case. But the official report came back the same as the others before it. Subject entered Shenandoah National Park and vanished. Cause unknown. Search suspended after 10 days. I couldn't accept that. Micah didn't just wander off. He wasn't reckless. He was prepared. He knew those woods better than most rangers, and yet he was gone. But what haunted me the most wasn't just that he disappeared. It was what they did find. On the 6th day of the search, one of the volunteers, a retired firefighter, found something odd. About a mile from Micah's last GPS location, he found a patch of disturbed earth. Not a campfire, not an animal den. It looked like someone had been kneeling for a long time, and in the dirt, Micah's necklace. It was a cheap leather string with a compass charm. He wore it every time he hiked. It was a gift from me back when we were teenagers. I had given it to him after a storm forced us to spend the night lost in the woods, together. Stupid thing barely worked, but he never took it off. They sent it to the lab for DNA, confirmed it was his, but there were no footprints, no drag marks, no broken branches, just the necklace, resting in the center of that patch of dirt, like it had been placed there deliberately. That's when something shifted in me. I knew in my gut this wasn't a typical missing hiker case. Micah hadn't gotten lost. He hadn't been hurt or attacked by wildlife. He had found the trail, and it hadn't let him go. The official search lasted 10 days. 10 days of methodical, exhausting, frustrating nothing. I was there for most of it, alongside rangers, volunteers, firefighters, even a couple of local hunters who knew the terrain better than any satellite map. Shenandoah is massive, and where Micah was last seen is one of the densest, most remote parts of the park. No reception, no lights, just miles of overlapping trails, thick undergrowth, and ancient silence. The lead ranger, a guy named Palmer, briefed us each morning. He had that kind of tired face that comes from seeing too much, too many rescues that turned into recoveries, too many recoveries that turned into cold cases. But Micah's case bothered him, not because of what we found, but because of what we didn't. There were no signs of a struggle, no dropped gear, no footprints, no blood, no shredded clothing. Even trained search dogs picked up nothing. One of them, an older German shepherd, refused to enter a certain patch of woods near Hazel Mountain, just sat down and whined. His handler said he'd never seen him react like that before. Every possibility was considered. Wildlife attack? No sign. Bears leave marks. So do cougars. Micah would have screamed. We would have found something, and even just a boot. Foul play? No evidence. No suspects. No motive. No one else had been in that area. They even checked the caves nearby, thinking he might have slipped or gotten trapped. We climbed down into cold, damp holes, barely big enough to crouch in. Nothing but rocks and echoes. By day 7, things started to feel off. One of the rangers said his compass spun in a full circle when he passed through a clearing east of where Micah's GPS last pinged. Another claimed he saw a light moving through the trees in the middle of the night, but when they they went to check it out, there was nothing there. No flashlight, no footprints. A few of us started whispering about the midnight loop, not loudly and never around the lead team. But we all knew the stories. Everyone who grew up near Shenandoah did. We just didn't want to say it out loud, because if we said it, we had to consider that Micah wasn't lost. He was taken. On the last day of the search, they brought in a drone with thermal imaging. It flew over every square inch of the area Micah had supposedly entered, and right around 2:17 p.m., as it passed over a dense cluster of trees, the screen glitched. Just for a second, one quick static flash. Then, everything was back to normal. They blamed it on interference, sunlight, battery sync issues, but I saw the recording. I watched the glitch frame by frame. For one single frame, less than a blink, there was a figure in the trees. Not moving, just standing there, blurred, human-shaped, but wrong. The proportions were off, the limbs too long, the head tilted like it was listening to the drone, and then it was gone. No one else wanted to talk about it. 2 days later, the search was suspended. They told us they had exhausted all possible leads, that they would remain open to new information, that accidents happen in the wilderness, but I knew better. Whatever happened to Micah didn't follow the rules of nature or logic, and I wasn't ready to let it go. After the official search ended, life was supposed to go on. That's what people told me anyway, that I needed to move forward, that I had done everything I could, that these things happen in the wild. But none of those words meant anything, not to me, because in the weeks that followed Micah's disappearance, things got strange. It started small, little things I could have dismissed if I wanted to, but I didn't. The first was a voicemail. My phone buzzed at 3:11 a.m. on a Tuesday. No caller ID, just unknown. When I played it, all I heard was static, but underneath it, barely audible, was a voice, one I swear was Micah's, saying my name. Not shouting, not whispering, just speaking. Evan, that's it. I played it a dozen times, cleaned it up with audio tools, it was there, but when I tried to save it, it deleted itself, gone, like it had never been there. Then came the photo. 2 weeks after that call, I got an email. No subject, no sender, just an attached .jpg file. The image was dark, almost black, but after adjusting the contrast, I could make out trees, and standing between them was someone, a figure, blurred by fog, wearing what looked like a backpack, and around their neck, something shiny, a compass. It was Micah's necklace. I showed it to his parents. They broke down. I sent it to the Rangers. They said it was a hoax. Someone playing a sick joke, they told me, but they couldn't trace the email. The IP was masked. It vanished after I opened it, like the voicemail. And then there was the forest. I started walking near the park again, not deep into it, just to feel close to where Micah had been. And that's when I began noticing something else. Every time I went near Hazel Mountain, I heard footsteps, always behind me, never close, never running, just slow, steady crunches on the leaves. I'd stop, silence. I'd move, they'd follow. Once, I turned around fast with my phone camera recording. The footage was black for the first few seconds, then suddenly snapped into focus, just long enough to catch a shadow ducking behind a tree. Not an animal, too tall, too smooth, too human. But it wasn't just what I saw or heard, it was how I felt. The air in that place was wrong, heavy, charged, like a thunderstorm about to break, but never does. And the deeper I walked, the more time stopped making sense. My watch would freeze, then jump ahead. My phone battery would drain 40% in a minute. The sun would vanish behind clouds that weren't there. One night I stood at the same spot Micah's GPS had last pinged. I waited, just to see, and at exactly 12:03 a.m., I saw something I can't explain. The trees in front of me shifted, not in the wind, not swaying. They moved, like they were making space. And right in the middle of them, for the briefest moment, I saw a path, a narrow trail of dirt, winding off into fog, lit only by moonlight. A trail that wasn't there before, and when I blinked, it was gone. I didn't follow it, not yet, but I knew then, without a doubt, Micah had been right. The trail was real, and it was calling me next. It took me 3 weeks to make the decision. 3 weeks of pacing my apartment every night, staring at my phone, rewatching the footage from the shadow in the trees, listening to that warped voicemail over and over in my head, even though it was long gone. Something inside me knew I had to go back, not for closure, not even for answers really. I just couldn't let it end with silence. I couldn't let the forest keep Micah without a fight. So I started preparing. I bought new gear, thermal camera, high-lumen flashlight, fresh batteries, topo maps, compass, backup compass, satellite tracker, and a cheap string necklace with a fake compass like the one I gave Micah all those years ago. Some part of me thought maybe it mattered. I didn't tell anyone I was going. I knew they'd try to stop me. They'd call me crazy, say I was grieving, obsessed, losing touch with reality. But I was more lucid than I'd ever been, focused, cold, determined. I picked the night, carefully. October 12th, 1 year to the day since Micah vanished. The moon was waning. The air was thick with mist. Perfect conditions, according to the stories. I parked at a pull-off near Hazel Mountain Trail around 10:45 p.m. It was colder than expected. My breath came out in thick clouds as I stepped into the dark. Every sound echoed, the crunch of my boots, the distant creak of old branches. The occasional rustle I told myself was just wind or wildlife. I followed Micah's last known path exactly. I had studied it for months. Every step burned in my memory. By 11:50, I was at the clearing where his GPS last pinged. I stood. Still, no sound, no movement. The trees around me stood like silent judges, black silhouettes against a dim sky. I waited. 12 o'clock passed. Nothing. 12:01. Stillness. 12:02. Fog began to rise, low and slow, like it was seeping up from the dirt itself. Then came the cold. Not weather cold, bone cold, like something had opened nearby. And I was standing too close. At exactly 12:03 it happened. The air changed. My flashlight flickered once, twice, then steadied. And just ahead, maybe 30 feet in front of me, the trees moved. Not all at once, not like in a windstorm. They shifted deliberately, branches pulling back, trunks angling apart, as if something behind them needed a way out. And there it was, a trail, narrow, winding, faint, but unmistakable. It hadn't been there a minute ago. It looked freshly walked, like someone had just passed through. And for the first time since Micah disappeared, I felt something electric in my chest. Hope, dread, both. I stepped forward. Each step felt heavier than the last, not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, whatever you want to call it. Like I was stepping into a place I wasn't meant to be, like I was being watched. When I reached the mouth of the trail, my flashlight died, not dimmed, not flickered, snapped off. I reached for my backup. It lit for half a second, then died too. Everything was dark. Silent, except for a voice behind me, a whisper, one word. Evan. It was his voice, Micah's. For a long moment, I couldn't move. I stood at the edge of that unnatural path, surrounded by trees that felt wrong, like they were leaning in, like they were watching me decide. The whisper, my name, in Micah's voice, still echoed in my ears. I wanted to turn back. Every rational thought in my head screamed at me to get out, but something deeper pulled me forward. Not curiosity, not obsession. It felt like gravity, like I had crossed a point of no return, and now the forest wouldn't let me go until I saw what it wanted to show me. So I stepped in. The first thing I noticed was the sound, or the lack of it. No wind, no insects, not even my footsteps. It was like the trail swallowed noise. The deeper I went, the thicker the silence became. My boots should have crunched on dead leaves, but they didn't. The ground felt soft, almost padded, like walking across a thick carpet made of moss and memory. The fog grew denser with every step, wrapping around me like cloth. My flashlight was still dead, and my phone wouldn't turn on, but somehow the trail glowed faintly in the dark. Not from light exactly, but from contrast, like it wanted to be followed. The trees along the path weren't normal. They were tall, thin, and far too smooth, like their bark had been stripped clean. Some of them bent at sharp, unnatural angles. Others seemed to pulse slightly, like they were breathing. Once I thought I saw a face in one, just for a second, stretched long and open-mouthed like it had been caught. Mid-scream. Still I walked. Time started to slip. I don't know how long I was on that trail. My watch had stopped ticking the moment I entered. Could have been 10 minutes, could have been hours. The trail would wind, curve and loop in ways that made no geographic sense. I passed the same twisted tree 3 times, or maybe there were 3 of them. I couldn't tell anymore. At one point, I came across something in the middle of the path, a photograph, lying flat on the ground, untouched by wind or moisture. I picked it up. It was a picture of me and Micah from a camping trip we took when we were 17, except we were older in the photo. Both of us looked like we do now. Our clothes were different. The background wasn't the park. It was somewhere else, somewhere with trees that didn't look real. I dropped it and kept walking. That's when the whispers started. Not just my name this time. Phrases, questions, echoes. Why did you wait? He called you. You belong here now. They came from all directions. Some too close, others impossibly far. The trail widened ahead, just slightly, and I saw something sitting in the center of the path, a compass necklace, Micah's. It was resting on a flat rock, perfectly centered, as if placed there with care. I reached for it, and as my fingers touched it, the forest changed. The air thickened. The trees pulled back. A wind howled from nowhere, and ahead, in the fog, a shape began to emerge. A silhouette, tall, still, human. maybe. Micah! I stepped closer, heart pounding, breath frozen in my throat, but the shape didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there until its head tilted, sharply, unnaturally, as if to study me from some twisted angle. Then it whispered, "You shouldn't have come." I didn't run. I don't know why. I should have. Every part of me knew something was wrong. But in that moment, frozen in the fog, standing face to face with whatever that figure was, I felt calm, not safe, not brave, just numbly calm. It was as if the forest had wrapped itself around my mind, softly, like a blanket right before sleep or death. The figure didn't speak again. It didn't need to. I stepped forward, and it vanished. Gone. No rustling, no sound. Just gone. In its place, the trail split. One path veered left, wide and clear. The other curved right, narrower, darker, but lined with stones I recognized from somewhere. That's when I realized I'd seen this place before, in a dream, or maybe a memory. I had no way of knowing anymore. The boundaries were gone. I chose the right path, and that's when time broke. It started with the trees. They were frozen like photographs, but as I passed them, they aged in reverse, bark peeling inward, moss ungrowing, leaves curling and vanishing back into bare branches. The air shimmered. I looked down at my hands, and for a moment, they weren't mine. They were smaller, younger, fingers I hadn't seen since childhood, then suddenly older, wrinkled, trembling, shaking. My reflection flashed in a puddle, and I didn't recognize the man staring back. Ahead, I saw flashes of memories, projected on tree trunks, flickering like old home videos. Micah and I building a treehouse, Micah yelling at me in the rain, Micah crying, Micah screaming. The trail narrowed further, now barely more than a crease in the earth. I passed a rusted sign, half buried in moss. It read, "You've already been here." I turned. The path behind me was gone. No footsteps, no trail, just trees. I moved forward. My thoughts started to echo, not in my head, but around me. I'd think something. This can't be real. And the forest would whisper it back in my own voice. I tried to remember how long I'd been walking. A minute? An hour? A day? But time didn't exist here. It stretched and twisted like branches overhead. I checked my watch. The hands spun like windmill blades, then stopped completely, dead center. 12:03 a.m., exactly when the trail had appeared. That time, never. Changed again. From that moment on, no matter how far I walked, how much I saw, how deep I went, it was always 12:03. The forest wasn't just outside of time, it was eating time, compressing it, repeating it. I was walking in a loop, but not a physical one, a temporal loop, where the same second played over and over, stretching longer each time. And that's when I heard it. A voice. Micah's. Close. He was crying. I ran. Branches slapped my face. The fog thickened, and suddenly, just ahead, I saw him. Micah sitting on the ground, curled up, holding his knees, whispering to himself. "Evan?" he said without looking up. "Is it really you this time?" I stepped closer. He looked up. His eyes were hollow. His skin was pale. His hair had grayed. He looked like he had aged years, even though it had only been one. He smiled, but it was broken. "You finally heard me," he said, "but you shouldn't have come." For a while, we didn't speak. I just sat next to him. Micah stared into the mist, like he was watching something I couldn't see. His body trembled, but not from the cold. He was afraid, in a way I'd never seen before, like something inside him had snapped and never healed right. Finally, I whispered, "What happened to you?" He didn't look at me. He just said, "It's not a place, it's a thing." I waited. He continued, his voice cracking with exhaustion. "I followed the trail, same as you. I thought it was a myth, a challenge. I wanted proof. But the moment I stepped on it, I knew it was watching, testing. It doesn't want anything. It doesn't need anything. It just feeds. Feeds on what?" I asked. He finally turned toward me. "Time, memory, identity, everything you are." That's when I started to hear it. Not voices, not like before. Sounds. Distant at first. Subtle, but growing. Rustling leaves. Dragging footsteps. A faint humming, like electricity in the air. And underneath it all, a low, rhythmic breathing. Not mine. Not Micah's. Something else. Something vast. Close. Awake. Micah grabbed my arm hard. "Listen to me. It learns you. Every time you think, speak, remember, it gets stronger. The longer you stay, the more it knows, the more it takes." His eyes darted into the fog. He winced. "Don't say your name. Don't think about who you were. It uses that to keep you here." I asked him how long he'd been trapped. He shook his head. "I don't know. A year? 100. I dream in languages I don't speak. I forget who I was, then remember again, and it hurts. Time here isn't broken. It's alive. It wraps around you until you become part of it." The sounds grew louder, crunching, cracking, something heavy moving through the trees. I turned my head slowly and saw nothing, but I could feel it. A presence, immense, patient. It wasn't hunting. It wasn't rushing. It knew we had nowhere to go. Micah stood up, trembling. They always come when you find someone else. The trail doesn't like company. Who? I asked. What comes? He looked at me with tears in his eyes. The ones who didn't leave in time. A scream echoed through the forest, distant but human, followed by a second voice, a third, some crying, others laughing. Then, silence. Micah grabbed my hand and started walking. We have to keep moving. If we stay still, the trail folds us in. He looked back once more. But it's too late for me. What do you mean? I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he started to hum a melody, soft and familiar. It was the song our uncle used to sing at camp when we were kids. Only now it echoed twice, once from Micah's mouth and once from somewhere behind us. We walked in silence for what felt like hours. The fog thickened around us until I couldn't even see my own feet. Micah moved ahead of me, slow and deliberate, but somehow always just far enough to stay in the mist. Every time I tried to match his pace, he seemed to drift a little farther, like the trail was stretching between us, 1 inch at a time. I called out to him once. He didn't answer. I picked up my pace. Micah, slow down. He stopped, slowly turned, and stared at me. His face was off. Same eyes, same beard, same tear in his jacket I remembered from the day he vanished. But his expression was blank, like something wearing Micah's skin was trying to remember how he used to look. He tilted his head slightly, like a dog hearing a strange sound. Then he smiled, but only with his mouth. His eyes stayed wide, unblinking. You're still here, he said. You stayed. This time. I froze. What do you mean this time? I asked. He blinked once. Slowly. They always send a version of you. My blood turned cold. What version? I asked. What are you talking about? He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, metal and familiar. A compass necklace, but not one. 2, identical. 1 in each hand. You've been here before, Evan. I shook my head. No, this is my first time. He stepped closer. You said that last time. 2. I took a step back. Something inside me cracked, Midas, like a dam breaking. A flood of flashes hit me all at once. Me walking this same trail. Me talking to Micah. Me not finding Micah. Me being alone. Me screaming. Me disappearing. Visions or memories. I don't understand, I whispered. Micah, or whatever he was, stepped even closer. You were here last year. You were here a decade ago. You'll be here tomorrow. The trail doesn't take people. It recycles them. His eyes shimmered in the fog. Not with tears, but with something deeper. Reflection, memory, endless repetition. Then he held out both necklaces. Choose one. I stared at his hands. Identical necklaces. One was mine, but which? The forest pulsed. The fog curled like fingers. I heard footsteps behind me again. The humming grew louder. Choose, Micah whispered. Only one of us can leave. I stared at the 2 necklaces in Micah's hands. They were identical. Same string, same compass, same rust along the edges. I looked for a mark, a scratch, anything that could tell me which was mine, but there was nothing. Only one of us can leave, he said again, his voice now barely above a whisper. Behind him, the forest shifted. The fog began to swirl, like smoke rising from the dirt. The air crackled thick with static, and beneath it all I heard the breathing again, deep and slow, like something massive was waking up just under the surface of the world. I took a step back. This is a trick, I said. You're not Micah. He didn't flinch. Neither are you. The words hit harder than I expected, like they echoed somewhere deeper than my ears, a place I hadn't noticed until now, where something had been watching me from inside myself. The wind picked up, screaming through the branches. Trees bent toward me, and for a split second, I saw dozens of shapes moving between them, tall, thin, familiar, each one wearing a face I recognized. Mine, Micah's, my father's, people I didn't even know but somehow remembered. They didn't speak, they just pointed. At the necklace I had to choose, so I did. I closed my eyes, reached out, grabbed one at random. The other necklace fell to the ground, and so did Micah. He dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. No scream, no sound, just collapse, as if something inside him had been switched off. The fog swallowed his body. I reached for him, but the trail behind me lit up with a strange glow, faint but clear, an exit, or what looked like one. I ran. Branches tore at my arms. Whispers followed me. My legs burned. Lungs screamed, but I ran. I didn't look back. The forest began to blur. Trees flickered in and out. Ground turned to stone, then grass, then back again. I felt myself fading, like my memories were being rewritten mid-step, but I didn't stop. Until suddenly, light. Not moonlight, not the forest's strange glow. Real light. Morning light. I burst out of the trees and collapsed onto pavement, the trailhead parking lot. There were cars, rangers, people. I was back. I looked at my watch. October 13th. Only 1 day had passed. I laughed. I cried. I clutched the necklace in my hand. I'd made it out. I'd escaped, or so I thought, until I got home. I walked into my apartment, dropped my bag, and went to the mirror in the hallway. And there, hanging around my neck, was the necklace, only it wasn't mine. It was Micah's. His initials were carved into the back, something I'd forgotten he'd done when we were 16, and worse, I didn't recognize the reflection. The face staring back looked like me, but just a little off. The eyes were too hollow, the smile too still, the skin too pale, and behind me, in the mirror, just for a second, I saw a tree, not inside my apartment, inside the reflection. The forest wasn't done with me, not yet. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room with every light on, the necklace clutched in my hand like it was the only thing keeping me anchored to reality. The silence in my apartment felt heavier than the forest ever did. Not quiet, watching. Around 3 a.m. I looked in the mirror again. My reflection blinked out of sync with me, just once, just a fraction of a second, but I saw it, and it saw me. I stopped going to work. I stopped answering my phone. I tried to convince myself it was trauma, exhaustion, grief, that I imagined it, that I'd been through something unexplainable, and my brain was just breaking. But things kept happening. Every time I passed a window, I'd see fog outside, even on sunny days. Sometimes I'd hear Micah's voice behind me, humming that old campfire song. I tore down the mirrors in my apartment after I walked past one and saw a tree where my bedroom should have been. I smashed my phone after it rang at exactly 12:03 a.m. 3 nights in a row, even though I'd changed the number. I started getting mail addressed to Evan Reed, but the handwriting on the envelopes was mine, and I never sent them. One day, a ranger from Shenandoah called me. He said hikers had reported strange sounds near Hazel Mountain again, said someone had heard crying in the woods. He asked if I was okay. I told him I was fine, but I'm not, because lately, I've been losing time. I'll blink and it's dark out. I'll eat and forget I've already eaten. I'll dream in places I've never been, places that feel more real than my waking life. And in those dreams, the forest is waiting. Micah is there sometimes. Sometimes he talks to me like nothing ever happened. Other times he just stares with that blank, silent smile, and I swear he looks more like me every time. The other night I woke up standing in my hallway with mud on my feet and leaves in my hair. The trail was still there, in my head, clear as ever. And sometimes when I close my eyes I hear footsteps, not outside, inside. I don't know if I ever really left Shenandoah. I don't know if the thing that walked out of that forest wearing my name was still me. Maybe the trail lets you go, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it just sends something back, so if you ever hear someone call your name in the woods, even if it sounds like someone you love, even if it sounds like you, don't follow it, because once you see the trail, it sees you too.